Okay, I'll try not to detain you too long. It's been a long day, and exciting, but obviously also a tiring 3 days for everyone. I begin with a last bit of, I think it's a last bit of housekeeping. Certificates. We've already produced 1 or 2 for people who need them for their own institutional admin purposes. If you need anything from us in the way of documentation, if you simply email Maria, then I'll handle it and sign it off. But yes, some larger things then. Firstly, there have been a lot of thanks expressed over the last few days. I'd like to add my own. I'd like to express profound thanks to Ivana Petrovic and to Maria Canellu for an enormously dynamic input to create, I think, a very successful conference. And especially, of course, to Maria as sort of the executive on the ground who's been making the thing flow so smoothly, plus Maria's assistants. These things don't happen, you know. It's not like kabuki theatre, you know. Handouts. Thank you. Handouts don't just appear. There are lots of people working away behind the scenes. My enormous thanks to the speakers. We've had some very high quality papers, and the conference is nothing, I think, without the intellectual calibre of the speakers. Both quality, range, thematic range, chronological range. It's been particularly nice, I think, latter part of the conference, getting that extended chronological dimension with all of the feedback that we've had from the audience. My thanks very much to all of the chairs, because again, you can't have an effective conference without a series of proficient and efficient chairs. And of course, warm thanks to the audience, because a conference is nothing without an interactive audience. And you need, I think, that free play of ideas, but a generous free play of ideas. And so my thanks to all of you. It's been a really interesting conference, particularly for someone like myself, who simply sat with his shoes off and just sort of watched the whole thing go by. But there are a number of things. You try, obviously, with a conference to confine it into a number of sessions, but it is interesting to see the dialogues that generate themselves across the conference programme. Particularly interesting for me, the literary inscriptional interplay, because, of course, this is a conference on literary epigram. But constantly one is taken back to the need for the taxonomy, but the limitations of the taxonomy and the permeability of the boundaries. And time again, Joseph Day, Sylvia Barbantani, Ivana Petrovic, Andrei Petrovic, Richard Hunter, Mike Tula, Arik Avdokeen, Steve Smith, Professor Giomini, all, I think, keep taking us back to the need to read against and with the grain of inscriptional epigram. Epigram and performance, a repeated theme. Professor Day at the very beginning, Ivana Petrovic, Doris Meyer, Simone Betta. The chronology, nature, organisation of the various anthologies, the way they come into being, and the stages at which they come into being, both inscriptional and literary. Professor Hirschler, Andrei Petrovic, Ivana Petrovic. And then, very, very large element for me has been the way in which one needs to read this quite remarkable genre across multiple axes, and often simultaneously across multiple axes if one is to understand it properly. And by that I mean diachronic and synchronic axes, generic, intertextual, political, and cultural. So that one gets, for instance, I think, the sense of the rich intertextual links between epigram and the preceding tradition, for instance, Richard Hunter, Simone Betta. The sense in which epigram itself starts to engage with epigram when epigram becomes a mainstream genre and part of the tradition against which it continues to define itself. Epigram as a point of convergence between different genre, Annetta Harder, and the sheer diversity of intertexts against which Epigram is operating and defining itself. And I mean just not just literary intertext and literary genre, but other kinds of generic material. Professor Menlein Robert on Iamata, Simone Betta on the riddle, the symptotic riddle. And not just, of course, a body of text, but one needs to think more largely, I think, in terms of text if one wants to see the complex interactions in play, interaction with other kinds of media. Professor Essa Floridi, Peter Bing, on the way in which text is interacting with iconography. And of course, if one follows Stephen Smith today, then one can sort of read that larger in terms of landscape as well as built environment in the narrower sense. The diverse nature of variatio and allusion and the different levels of granularity against which it's operating, from the formal and aesthetic, for instance, Professor Gutzwiller, Professor Smith, and then the larger sort of religious, cultural, ideological and political frameworks, and of course the shifting nature of those frameworks within which Epigram is offering Fantuzzi, Canellu, Gutzwiller, Bing, Avdokhin, Garuli, Smith, Jomini, all playing out there. And then, of course, at a different level of granularity, allusion as ethical and metapoetic gesture, Charlie Campbell, or, of course, allusion as parody. So all of these things, I think, are at the risk of seeming banal, all of these, I think, are things that are constantly in play across these papers. And I found it enormously illuminating. The reason I stress the coherence is, of course, that I come to the final piece of my housekeeping, and that is the issue of publication. Because a conference can excite you, it can enlighten you, but then, of course, you can go away back to the study and forget about it. But if it comes together, and I think this one has come together, then I think it is important to look at what the next step is. And we would like to turn this into a substantial publication. And what we would like to ask of you is that by the end of this month, we would like you to send to Maria and to copy to Ivana and myself the delivered form of your paper. That is, no airbrushing, no polishing, just the delivered form of the paper, so that we can get a sense, a visual sense as well as an aural sense of how it comes together, with, of course, the handout, and that will allow us to start the process of planning the volume, scoping it in terms of scale, in terms of structure. And if you can do that, then our guarantee in return is that we will get back to you by December with our response, and on the basis of that we will proceed to make our publication proposal, and our intention will be that in June 2014 we will ask for a full text of your paper, and the idea, of course, is to strike while the iron is hot, because, as you know, you can go to a conference as a first-year undergraduate and retire as a professor before the publications ever actually emerge. And we would like you to see this in your own working lifetime, rather than just have it as something that your grandchildren eventually will get to read. So I hope that's reasonable, a reasonable request. But if there are any queries, then by all means get back to us. And Ivana tells me that I should also say something about the filming. You've all had the opportunity to stand here or sit here and star. What will now happen is that Marco and Rob, our two cameramen, will do some editing where editing is needed. We will have from you all anyway your handout as a result of my previous request. And what we will be planning to do is to upload the video, plus the handout to our YouTube site. Marco remarked to me this morning, they filmed in HD. And so that does mean that when our people upload it onto the website, it does mean that the PowerPoint presentations will be visible. So there will be no difficulty in having you and the PowerPoint simultaneously visible to the reader. And what we'll also do is we'll create links on the website between the video and the handout, because of course it's quite mystifying if you're listening to it or watching a lecture at which someone says, you know, passage 13, which in your case you have not got, would have told you. So all of that will allow your public to enjoy, as we've enjoyed, the experience of your papers. I did promise you that nothing will go live without your approval, and that remains true. We will contact you with the link to your bit, so that you can well, firstly get your mum and dad to watch you, but also you can ask if you like it, if you're happy with it, because obviously we would not go ahead without all of your approval. Our experience says that you will actually enjoy what you see, and certainly your friends and family and your students will enjoy it as well. So can I again thank you all for what for me has been a tremendously rewarding experience, and I hope has been for you as well. Enjoy your weekend, and safe journey to those of you who have to go on elsewhere. Thank you.